Hey there, internet friends. Trevor Starkey here, and welcome to the first installment of my 2017 Game of the Year week content. As I've done the last couple years, one of the things I like to do in this Game of the Year kind of run is take a look back at what I thought last year. So I'm kicking off today with a look back at my worst of 2016 list. See, how I think about those games today, if I've thought about them at all, if I thought they've maybe my thoughts on them have cooled over time, or if they just immediately bring back a fiery rage. So without further ado, let's look back at my 2016 list. I kicked things off last year with a series of dishonorable mentions that weren't quite bad enough to make the full list of 5 bad games that I had on the list, but elements that I wanted to call out for how bad they were. And those were the controls of The Last Guardian, the story and characters for Final Fantasy XV, Pokemon Go's missed opportunities, and the NES Classics supply chain failures. And it's very interesting in that, looking ahead now a year, 3 out of the 4 of those have been more or less resolved, or they're getting resolved, or they've at least been addressed. The controls of The Last Guardian, still janky, still piece of shit, and based on my preview of Shadow of the Colossus at PSX, doesn't look like they're really caring about, making a new, better control scheme. People keep saying that, no, they're patching in a new way to control and whatnot. I didn't see it in that demo, so I'll believe it when I see it. But other than that, you have Square Enix spent pretty much all year improving and fixing and adding to the story and characters in a way that is pretty impressive. Good for them for kind of fleshing out the story for free in some patches, but also adding the character-specific DLC packs to really fill in the gaps of when those characters, when Gladio and Ignis and Prompto all leave the party for a little bit of time. You get to see through these DLC installments, this is what happened while they were away. And so, good on them for adding that, but also fuck them because it should have been in the game in the first place, especially something as critical as those story elements. It infuriates me still, but at least they're trying. It's the kind of thing that, okay, well, now I'm not going to play Final Fantasy 16 when it comes out, assuming there ever is a Final Fantasy 16. I'm going to say, fuck it, I'm going to wait a year or two until they've actually made the full game. So that's aggravating, but at least they didn't just drop it and leave it at that. Also, with Pokemon Go, you've had them continuing to support that game, adding, multiple generations of new Pokemon. There's shiny Pokemon in there. There's more customization features. There's raids. All this stuff that they've been doing to add to that game. But again, in both of these cases, it's a little too late for me. I'm not going back to Pokemon Go anytime soon. So, good for them for continuing to support it for the people who are really invested in it, and the Andrew Goldfarbs of the world who are out there playing it day in, day out. But, not enough to draw me back in. And admittedly, in something like Pokemon Go, it probably wouldn't have been enough to keep me in there anyway, especially as, once you got past the original 150 Pokemon, I don't have the patience or time to try and deal with relearning or learning all the rest of them. So, lastly, you had the NES Classic last year, and when the Super Nintendo Classic was released this year and had some pre-order issues and whatnot, good on Nintendo for coming out and saying we're going to be supporting the SNES Classic longer throughout the year. We're going to be making far more than we made of the NES Classic, and we're going to be relaunching the NES Classic in summer of 2018. So they're even bringing that back. They heard people's concerns and frustrations and gripes about dealing with scalpers and stuff, and so good on Nintendo for actually recognizing that, kind of pulling a bit of a mea culpa and saying, we heard you, we're gonna get this resolved, there will be more NES Classics. So I'm at the point where, hey, you know what? I might go ahead and actually get one. If I can pick one up, I will pick up an NES Classic and add it to my SNES Classic, and my parents got me for Christmas today one of those Atari flashbacks. So I can relive, the 0 to 10-year-old Trevor's life of video games, all in one shelf if I really want to. So, good on them for resolving that. Moving into the actual proper list of games, number 5 was Broforce, and my main frustration with Broforce last year was that while I appreciated the game, it was glitchy and buggy, and basically the issue was like when you loaded into a level, the controls just like skip for a second. So like you could be running and then you would just freeze for a split second for a couple frames, and then it would pick back up. And so in a Twitch shooter like that one, it becomes very impossible, especially later in some of the final missions of that game. Like, it makes it nearly impossible to beat that game. And so, like, ultimately I had a mix of those memories as well as the fun I had with the game, and its kind of tongue-in-cheek, super 80s action aesthetic. But the game was already multiple years old when it was ported to the PlayStation 4, so those issues should have been resolved going into the port, and it's a frustration still that it wasn't. Number 4 was Mighty Number 9. Of course, got lambasted. I admittedly haven't really thought about the game at all until Capcom recently announced Mega Man 11, and because they are ditching the 8-bit era art style for the game, and going more of a 2.5D aesthetic, it immediately drew comparisons to Mighty Number 9. I will be curious to see how Mega Man 11 is received. Will it be loved? Will it be loathed? It'll probably be loved, even if it's not that great, because as we found out this year, nostalgia is kind of a hell of a thing. So, but yeah, Mighty Number 9 has not crossed my thoughts really at all this year. Number 3 was Fire Emblem Fates, particularly Birthright, but really all 3 games, because my gripe here was that with all 3 games sharing pretty much the same first half of the game, almost like identical, it was infuriating to me that they sold it as 3 separate products instead of just letting you choose at one point, okay, go this path, or go this path. No, you had to buy each of those paths, and I detest that element of that business decision. So I didn't like that. I also didn't like that the way they tried to shoehorn the mechanic from Awakening of pairing off your people and then like getting to fight alongside their offspring. In Awakening, you had the time travel element, and in Fates, you had them weirdly go off into like a limbo place. They grew up in limbo, and then they came and joined you like right at that same point in time. So it was like, you really just liked the Awakening mechanic, and you needed to put it back in this game, but couldn't use time travel again. So, I think ultimately, if I look at the Fire Emblem series, I'm just gonna say, you know what, I had a good time with Awakening. If I really want to play Fire Emblem again, I'll just go play Awakening. Lego Marvel Avengers was my number 2 frustration, my number 2 worst game of 2017, and it was a poor. Lego Marvel's Avengers was basically like 6 of the Marvel movies thrown into one game, and it used dialogue from a lot of the films, and just it was like there was terrible sound design. The mix was just improperly paired. I glitched out and died on like the same level a few times, and yeah, it was just not a great experience. It was the weakest of the Lego games that I've played, and I've played quite a few of them. Ultimately, though, it didn't like deter me from playing Lego games, as I platinumed both of the Harry Potter games this year for the first time when they got re-released in a remaster, which actually I think that happened last year, and I finally picked them up and played them this year. And I praised in that entry last year how much fun Lego Marvel Superheroes had been when they weren't really tied to the shackles of the MCU. And so I look forward to playing Marvel Superheroes 2, but with so many other things that came out this fall, I just really haven't jumped on that yet. I am certain I will play it within the first half of next year when I'm in the mood for just kind of a brainless collect-a-thon-y kind of game. I will hop in and most assuredly grab the platinum on that too, and hopefully enjoy it better than I enjoyed Marvel's Avengers. And then lastly, my number 1, which is a game I definitely hadn't thought about until I saw it on this list again, was Lemmings Touch. Now, this was a Vita game. It was a port of just a phone game, and the great thing about Lemmings is its puzzles. The pain in the ass thing about Lemmings sometimes is like its precision, and touchscreen technology on a Vita or on a phone is not great for that, especially when you have to like zoom in and grab like what type of lemming you want to use. When there are just 100 of them in one spot, it's impossible to grab the one you want. And, you know, kudos to the 554 people that have the platinum for this game on PSN profiles. I couldn't stand to play it for another second. So all in all, not an incredibly rage-inducing list in 2016. A few games fell short of, I think, their potential, and then a few of them were just poorly designed. Like, you shouldn't have done a touchscreen Lemmings game, in my opinion, but nothing overly egregious. So will 2017 have fared as well? You can check back on December 30th for my biggest disappointments of 2017 list. Yeah, I look forward to diving into that when we get there. If you want to continue, please subscribe and join me all week for my Game of the Year content. Tomorrow I will be back with a review and a look back on my best of lists for 2016, of what were the highs of last year and how do I think about them now. So please come back, stay tuned for that. As always, I've been your host, Trevor Starkey from TrevorTrove.com. You can read a full written write-up of You can read the write-up of basically this post at the link in the description below over on TrevorTrove.com. You can follow me at Snarky Starkey on Twitter, and until next time, from here at the Trove, treasure your friends.